Thanks for coming back. Here it is, part 2. And the security space is probably as bad, or maybe you tell me worse, than any in technology for carbidingulation, deconfibulation speak. And so, the interesting thing to me about it, I've done a little bit of advisor, consulting work in the security space too, although nothing compared to you, and I'm certainly not a security expert, but in terms of category design for a few security firms over time. And I'm going to say something that may be a little unfair. You tell me if you think this is unfair. I have not met leadership at a security company that has the courage to do something legendary. I'm not saying there aren't those companies. I know Palo Alto absolutely is. I mean, they reimagined that whole space, and they're one of the most successful enterprise technology and security companies in the last 15 or so years. So I know there are companies that do it. I had nothing to do with that one. But in general, at least the ones that I've worked with off and on, and I've sort of said, you know what? I mean, I'm retired anyway, but I kind of don't ever want to do anything in the security space because these companies are just not willing to set a big agenda and not willing to really try to become a category king. And so why is it a technology thing? Is it why is the headset of so many executives and entrepreneurs in the security space, not what I would consider to be the visionary, go forward, create a category, kick some intergalactic ass and become a category king mentality of so many other spaces and entrepreneurs in those spaces?
Well, 2 reasons. Number one, it's hard for people to quantify what is the value of security to me immediately, because unlike seatbelts in a car or a plane that doesn't fall out of the air, there's no immediate impact. If I have a bad password, I have to wait for something to happen. So getting people to buy in that you got to do this now so that you avoid it later. But I'll tell you the other thing too, give you a quick story too. Doing this work for Symantec, I was talking to the government and corporate affairs people. I told them, I said, here's a legendary thing that they could have done. I think would have been awesome. So during the time when China was hacking everything in sight, if it moved, it was hacked. If it didn't move, it was hacked. They were just going after everything. Our security sucked. I said, you guys should make a corporate statement, because they had just divested from the storage company they had, Veritas. They had just divested that. They were going away from that. And I said, if you guys want to make your mark, look, how much of your business do you get out of China right now? They said maybe $15 million. Now, that might be much for a small startup, but for them, that's a rounding error, in their big corporate financials. I said, come out. I actually introduced them to a couple folks in NATO, talked to these guys. How would you guys think of us if we took this stand? I said, you should come out today and say, we are no longer doing business in China. We will not sell any of our products. We're not going to allow them to see our source code. Basically, here's what we're doing to the Chinese, because as long as you keep hacking all of our customers, you will not get us to come in, kiss ass, just so we might sell a few things in China. I told them to do that. Guess what? Corporates, the corporate stuff, it's liability. It's, we can't do that. What would people think? I said, you know what people think right now is that you don't have a pair to go out and do something like this. Look, I got myself in trouble between Cisco and other stuff, because I was the guy, and Alcatel-Lucent, I read in your book too. You want to talk about Alcatel-Lucent not having it anymore? I came in and I ran their global public safety broadband. When I came in, my boss told me, which to this day, I respect the hell out of a guy named Ken Worth. He said, come in and break some glass, because he knew that if they just hired the regular old people, they would have done that. Well, we came out, we kicked ass. We competed against, we were the Salesforce to Siebel at that time. We were NAT on a hell of a fence line in, but we made a huge impact. We were the first to market. I ran a thing called Operation First Strike. We were kicking ass, taking names. And you know what? At the end of the day, I was working with some great people at Bell Labs and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's this corporate stuff. We have to go back to what would people think? I said, I don't care what people think. You know what I care? I care what my customers think. I care what public safety thinks.
I had a very similar experience back when I was still, a full-time category design coach at Play Bigger, the company. And, we had a situation where we were working with a very big, very visible, very well-known security company. We had done the category design. We had built the POV. When I say we, I mean we collectively, because, of course, as you know, the company is really in the driver's seat. Anyway, we are on the eve of the lightning strike. That is to say, the launch of the new category with the point of view. We are, I don't know, a week, maybe 2 weeks out at most. And they fucking change it all. And they go back to sort of where the puck is, if you will, as opposed to where they're trying to drive the puck to be.
Yeah.
And they sort of just mention it to us. They're like, oh, by the way, it'll be a little different when you see it. See ya. And then they launch, and it was just, they just peed down their leg.
I'm going through that right now.
Nothing happened.
Absolutely.
No fucking balls. And so here's my question. And by the way, I don't think this is universally true. Our dear friend, Jennifer Johnson, recently joined a company called Tenable. That's a security company in I think in your area of the woods. I think they're in the Washington
The name
area.
says it all too. Cannibal. I love it.
No. Tenable, not
Oh,
cannibal.
Cannibal. I thought you said cannibal. I was going to go, yeah.
I wish it was cannibal.
We're gonna
That
keep
actually
that.
will bring me to another question I have for you. But before we go to cannibal security, no, Tenable. And, they seem to be doing a very great job of doing some proactive things. And I know others are, so I don't want, to quote Archie Bunker, to be misconstrued on this one. But I had this wonder when I decided I didn't want to have anything to do with the fucking security space anymore, which is, if you're in security, by definition, you're somebody who's focused on minimizing risk and downside. By definition, that's your psychological headset. Mm-hmm. And so I sort of had this aha, well, no kidding, more entrepreneurs and executives in the security space aren't visionary, wanting to be category kings, because they're totally motivated by the downside. And I sort of had this aha, which is, hey, Lochhead, you're a moron trying to think people whose motivation is reduce the risk to do something visionary. Now, is that unfair, or is there a lot of that in the security technology business?
I think you're hitting upon a key theme right there, which is, look, it's all about, we're in business so that bad things don't happen to our customers. So it's very hard to tell. How do you tell a good story about something that didn't happen? So it's very hard to do that. Well, we repelled an attack. Look, again, goes back to a couple companies like Symantec. I still stay in touch with some folks there. I still have a fond place in my heart for them. But I gave them an opportunity, like on WannaCry and other stuff. I had people tell me, hey, we found this, our sensors detected this. I said, give it to me. Because one of the things I do is I'm an analyst for Fox News, Fox Business, SiriusXM. I mean, I've been doing this for like 14 years. So I'll go on, and part of my role is to take these big complex things, turn them into something that their average viewer, hey, what is this at the end of the day? What does it mean to me? I'm sitting here in my Barca Lounger, a beer in my hand. Why should I care? What does it mean to me? So I said, this is a great chance to tell people, oh, well, no, we're, it was all of this hand wringing. I'm like, so I'll tell you, in this short time, even before we got on this call, I made a huge decision, which is I have to fire one of my clients. You know why? Because no cojones. Life is too short. I have more years behind me than I have ahead of me. Life is too short for me to try and drag people into doing stuff. Either you're predisposed to do it and you just need somebody to help you execute, or you are stuck in the harbor. And what was that old saying? Ships were never designed to stay safe in the harbor. They were designed to go to sea. That's where they're designed to be. But if you want to be safe and stay in the harbor, find somebody else to be your harbor master, because, dude, I'm the type of guy, parachute me in, give me a machete, I'll figure it out, let's just go do something. I got no use to sit around, stare at my navel, and sit on my thumb.
Amen. Hallelujah, officer.
Right
now,
on.
let's go back. So you shared what I should do as an individual. That's very cool.
Now the enterprise.
There's some things I need to work. Yeah. So now I'm the chief executive of a fast-growing entrepreneurial company, and maybe not in tech. And obviously this is critical. We see, executives at Target getting fired, and all these we see Sony movies getting hacked, and Orange is the New Black coming out under ransom, all these things that are happening. And so I got to believe there isn't a chief executive on the planet who doesn't at least think about this a little bit. What should I be thinking about?
First of all, I would be thinking about where my chief information security officer sits. Is that just a reporting function into the CIO, or do I start making them part of my C-suite to where I actually get people reporting?
And what's the best practice there now? Does the CISO report to the CIO or the CEO?
Yeah, right now, a lot of times they might report to somebody else. But I'm telling you, if you take security seriously, two things. Number one, elevate the position of the CISO. Number two,
so does the CISO need to report to the CEO in your opinion?
I think so. Because you know why? Let me ask you something. Let me ask you something now, as the Jersey boys say. Look, let's say that you are Apple. What's one of the worst things that could happen to Apple right now? Somebody breaches iTunes, their payment systems, whatever, shuts them down, ruins the trust between the consumer and Apple, because they've built, they've not that they're perfect, but they've done pretty well. Or what if you're another corporation, that Amazon business, it's all about
that's the one I think about a lot, because of course AWS has just been an extraordinary achievement, and I think makes a giant difference in not just Silicon Valley, around the world, because a lot of startups don't have, there's just a whole shit ton of infrastructure you
Well,
don't
it
need, right?
level the playing field. It means if I have an idea, I've got a way to take it to market now. I don't have to buy $3 million worth of equipment just to make my idea a reality.
That's absolutely right. In the late 90s, if you raised 5 million in VC,
four of it went to buying hardware.
Absolutely. And so that's awesome. And Netflix is now on AWS, and all these big vendors have moved to big providers.
But we know too, when they had their hiccup like they did, a lot of things went down. So there are still some challenges. But the second thing
surprisingly, it doesn't happen to them very much. I mean, there was that one big denial. It was a denial of service that took out the East Coast, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah, it was. And it actually hit a company called Dyn, which was later acquired by, can't think of who, but it basically was the DNS resolution system. It wasn't attacking the sites itself as much as it was attacking the way that you resolve. When you type in a web address, like if you're going to google.com, you're not going to google.com, you're going to an IP address that translates into google.com. So if I can break that chain, I can keep you from getting to where you want to go. It's like changing the road signs on the highway. The highway's still there. You just have no idea how to get there.
So I type google.com in, and they take me to something that looks like google.com. I don't know the difference.
Or they just break that link, and you're just sitting there because you're trying. Google.com doesn't know what IP address to resolve into to take you to google.com.
Yep.
So, but the second thing I would do too is, and I do this in all my keynotes I do right now, whether it's, I'm actually doing a neat one too. It's called Cyber Strike, Warfare in the Fifth Domain. I do a presentation on, in the future, what it looks like when Russia invades Ukraine and they don't fire a single shot to take them over. It's a combination of geopolitics, cyber strikes, cyber warfare. But the reason I say that is I don't do a traditional keynote sometimes anymore, because you know why? People are used to thinking the same old way. So I get them thinking differently, the great Apple thing, think different. But the other thing I do is I give them a document too. It's called How to Go 2 Questions Deep. You don't have to be a technology expert, Christopher, but I bet you've heard enough bullshit in your day that if I started giving you a line of bullshit, you could pretty much detect it, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we were having a technical discussion, you could bullshit me. But even then, to the discussion we had earlier about you being a cop, listen.
You could ask enough questions to get to the bottom of it. So I give them a guy.
I started my first company at 18 years old. I'm 49 years old. In a business context, there's a pretty good chance I can, suss out that bullshit.
And that's my point. But a lot of times, if I don't give you the structure, so I get through. I did this actually for Macquarie Securities. I did a keynote for them up in New York, and they have a lot of people come in and say, "But we don't know how to ask the right questions." I said, "Great, I'll teach you how to go 2 questions deep." The definition of an expert, you might say, somebody can go 5, 6 questions deep. I could ask you question after question, but if I can at least go 2 questions deep, I can at least, like you say, suss out the BS that's in there. So I've given them a guide that says, "Here's the questions you need to ask about all of your key things that relate to security. Am I getting the right answers? Are we doing the right things?" And you know what? The other thing too, the reason it's not working, Christopher, is many of these boards are ignorant. I don't mean ignorant in a bad way. I mean ignorant in the true definition of the sense. They don't know about cybersecurity. They don't know what the security posture is of the company. You ask them about P&Ls. If back in your day as a CMO, you're sitting with the CEO, if I ask you about P&L, we have an analyst call coming up. What about this? You guys can go through, but if I ask you, what's the penetration of 2-factor authentication in our organization? What is the saturation of VPNs in our organization?
I just thought maybe you said something that we need to call HR about.
And exactly my point, man. See, but what I'm saying, in this day and age, you should be as able to talk about security as you are about profit and loss, about human resources, about what our stock price is. And until we get to that point, you'll never get to the point where security is taken as seriously as the bottom line.
And I hate to beat a dead horse, but I'm going to
Let's do it anyway.
Let's do it anyway.
It's a zebra. Beat it. Redefine the expectations of the dead horse, and we can beat it all over again.
And to me, this represents frustration with the technology vendors because they have not educated. There's no fucking security company that I'm aware of. You tell me if this is unfair, Morgan, that is having a business conversation about technology security with
if
people
it is,
outside.
It's very little. They're not leading with it. It might be something they sneak in. I have I said it's not about the bits and bytes. Let's tell you a story. Let's have a business conversation and see how we add value as opposed to being a cost center. How do we actually make you more profitable? How do we accelerate your business?
Yes, the conversation that I always thought was the germane conversation was not what security stops, but what security makes possible. Yes, because the reality is, look, if you and I go have a beer at a local brew pub in Santa Cruz, hopefully when you come visit me, we want to walk into a building and sit down and have a beer. with no concern for a maniac coming in trying to punch us in the face. And if there was concern in Santa Cruz that there were maniacs running around punching people in the face all the time, then people would not go out to the brew pubs, right? And so to me, the secure environment that we live in, I'll give you a great example. Actually, I had this conversation with my wife last night. So Monday is garbage morning. So last night being Sunday night.
Same here. Yeah.
I took out the garbage. And, you know, it wasn't super late, but maybe, I don't know, 8-ish. It was definitely twilight. So I dragged the garbage down and I put it at the front. And as I'm about to sort of turn around and come back up my driveway, there's a gal out on our street walking her dog. And I forget exactly how she struck up a conversation with me, but she did. And we have a garden that's at the front of our property. And she said how pretty it was. And she asked me about some flowers and this and that. And we have hens. So she asked me about the hens. And I shared with her that, you know, if you want to come back during the day, happy to bring you around the garden. And there's great blueberries right now. And blah. And we have this wonderful conversation. And, you know, we shake hands, introduce ourselves. And I said, yeah, come by anytime. And that was the end of it. And when I got back into the house, I said to Carrie, my wife, I said, I love that we live in a neighborhood where that happens.
Yeah.
And I asked Carrie, I said, what's it like to be a woman in that situation? And what does it take as a woman, you know, and I'm 6 feet tall and I weigh 185 pounds and, you know, I'm a martial artist and, you know, I'm bald and, you know, you could have an interpretation that maybe you shouldn't talk to me. I was certainly a lot bigger than this gal, that was for sure. And so I said to Carrie, I said, as a woman, what's the process in your head you go through to make that decision to initiate a conversation? And so we talked about that. Anyway, what's my point? Long story longer. At some level, she makes that decision because she's secure. Yes?
In the context before she feels secure enough to say, hey, I can talk to you because I don't feel threatened. The environment is right. You know, I've oriented myself. It's the whole decision-making loop. They call OODA, observation, orientation, decision, and action.
Hold on. What's that one?
So you remember the movie Top Gun?
Yes, I do.
That Top Gun and Miramar was based upon a guy named Colonel Robert Byrd that back during Vietnam, he realized we started losing our air-to-air engagements with the North Vietnamese for one reason, because our F-4 Phantoms didn't have machine guns on them. They only had missiles on them. We thought we were all going to have to shoot missiles and we're going to blow the North Vietnamese out of the sky and everything be hunky-dory. Well, number one, the missiles sucked, most of them, the Sparrows. Number two, the North Vietnamese didn't buy into our doctrine of air warfare, so they kept engaging us. We losing these dogfights. So this colonel said, you know what it is? It's a decision-making loop. I have to, first of all, observe where I'm at. I have to observe.
Observe.
Then I have to orient myself based upon the culture, the context, the time of day, you know, things like that. Then I have to decide, which is decision. And then I
decide. In this case of this gal last night, she
observed, she oriented herself, said, I'm in a neighborhood. I feel safe. I see you coming out of a house. You're not breaking in because you're putting trash out there. I've made a decision now to engage with you. So she takes the action by speaking with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. All right. So CISO reports to CEO. And
board needs to have a different conversation. These boards are woefully ignorant of the real threat that's out there.
And is there a board conversation at every board meeting about security, Morgan, or what happens at the board level?
We're getting there now. I know that the SEC and some other folks have provided some regulation or some guidance, but look, it doesn't mean it has to dominate your conversation. But if you don't pay attention to that as much as you pay attention to your IT environment and what your technology is doing, you're short-circuiting. Because to your point, and I will use an example out of your book. Actually, I was just listening to Seth Godin. I'm taking his online marketing course. He actually nailed it too.
Is it good, his course?
It is. It's amazing. Seth is one of those guys, he just kind of speaks like this. And you feel like I feel like Austin Powers in that scene where you're standing there yelling and it's just steamroller coming at you and you're just screaming. He just comes at you so slow, but when he hits you, it's so powerful. It's just like, oh, you know.
Yeah, I've been a fan for years. And actually, I'd love to have him on Legends and Losers because I have one question I really want to talk to him about. And I got 5 hours in me on this, which is he wrote Permission Marketing in what year? Do you remember, Morgan? It was the mid-'90s, if my memory is
I actually have it on my iPad, that and Purple Cow and some other things like that.
Well, I remember for sure Purple Cow would have been 90, somewhere between 98 and 2000, because I remember exactly when I saw it, because actually somebody gave it to me. And I know permission marketing was before that. Anyway, the real question I want to ask him is, it's been plus or minus 20, no, more than 20 years since permission marketing. How come there's like a quarter inch of fucking text on every website I go to and everything else is puking marketing at me? He was right. And I want to tell every CMO and every media company in the world, stop with this fucking assault marketing.
No, I'm with you. And by the way, it goes back to exactly what we're talking about. Why is that discussion not happening? If I said, well, up until a few years ago, I said, what's the safest car in the world? What would your answer have been?
Well, I know from a marketing point of view, the answer is Volvo.
Right.
But from a reality point of view, that is to say, have I read all the consumer reports and do I know? The answer is I have no idea.
And that's the point, perception versus reality. So, I mean, what they perceive is not always what's real. So are you really safe? Well, I could market to you Volvo. They've lost their standing in the world. I mean, ever since they were bought, and you know, they tried to get snazzier, and they should have stuck with.
It really is a dying brand, isn't it? It used to be an amazing product, an amazing
Remember
brand.
The movie Arthur, you know, and Dudley Moore? It's kind of like, hey, they had people writing their ads. We're boxy, but we're safe, you know? I mean, they made
all of that stuff. Yeah. And I mean, Herbie the Love Bug. Oh, no, that's a VW, excuse me. But yes, the Volvo was a very, you know, my dad had one as a kid. He had a yellow one. It was very cool. And, you know, they had those really cool interiors and all that shit. And like, you barely even see Volvos now.
Right. But the way that wraps into it is that now what is perception versus reality is two different things. They're being told a lot of stuff at the board level that's not really real. You know why? Because somebody feeds them only what they think they need to hear so they can go on and do their job. The point about it is, unless you've got you remember when Sarbanes-Oxley came out? Now CEOs.
I do.
Yeah. You got to sign off on the bottom line, right? Because I know what you're talking about with Mercury and some other stuff.
That changed everything when there was a personal signature. And the reality is, the funny thing to me about SOX was, I don't know that anything was truly that different. It was just very explicit.
The perception. It was the perception that CEOs were now accountable. They were going to do the perp walk.
And I mean, I look at it and go, did they think they were not fucking accountable before? But yes, to your point, that increase in regs and the making it really explicit changed a lot. And it also, I mean, it created zillions of dollars for accounting firms, but that's a different conversation.
And that's how accounting firms stay in business, because if you ever abolish the IRS, they have to have a reason to be there. But the other thing too is, one of the things I did is I testified a couple times before Congress. One time was on the security of healthcare.gov, the security and privacy. And I'd actually been beating up these guys that I advised on the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee. I said, you need a Sarbanes-Oxley for cyber. In other words, we talk about companies who sign off on all the financial status. I want somebody to sign off on the cyber health of an organization. You know why? Because when you breach something, it just doesn't affect you. It's my medical records now. It's my credit card. It's my personally identifiable information, my protected health information. It is not your company. It's my information that's getting breached. Yep. So if you have to sign off on the profit and loss and that we're doing things right, why should we not have people sign off and go to jail when they intentionally misrepresent the security of a company? Because I choose to do business with companies, and I continue to do business with Apple. You know why? Because they take care of my stuff. I've never had an issue with Apple. That doesn't mean iCloud and stuff. But I've had credit cards my wife has from Target that have been breached, at Home Depot. I'm on my third credit card from Capital One right now. Why? Because somebody's managed, and I'm paranoid and very careful.
We get a new credit card once a quarter around here. I mean, our credit cards change all the time because. Is it just a reality that if you're buying shit online, you're going to get compromised? You're going to get a new credit card a couple times a year? Is that just the world that we live in now?
That's it. And one of the things I do is I have one card that I use specifically for that, and no others. Because you know what? If something happens, here's what happens with most.
So wait a minute. I want to make sure I understand this, Morgan. You have one credit card that you use for your online purchasing and nothing else.
Right. And I'll tell you why. Because I have several things for my business, and actually I'm working now with another friend of mine. We're actually acquiring a company. We're going to go launch into the public safety space, some technology around video. That's why your podcast with Eric Ewan was so informative. We're dealing with it from a public safety standpoint. But the reason I say that is I have a lot of services and stuff running right now based on a credit card or a debit card that I use. If I do online shopping and that one credit card gets compromised, guess what I got to do? I got to spend 3 fucking hours going through and changing all my other accounts. Okay, now I got to change this. What I've done is I've diversified my risk. So when I'm online and I'm doing this stuff, boom, If I have a problem with somebody, I've fired services before because I said, guys, I'm tired of having to redo my credit card because you had a data breach problem. So I loved your stuff, but it's not you, it's me. I'm moving on.
Yeah, I love that. That's something we got to consider ourselves on the personal side. Okay, so back at the enterprise, is there anything else me as a CEO needs to be thinking about?
I'll tell you, here's the other thing too. It's the other thing too is people always talk about user behavior. We have to do education and awareness. Again, it's all this gobbledygook corporate speak that makes us feel good, but they never really do anything about it. Here's an example. Why is training and bathing the same? Because neither one is permanent. Do you take a shower on a regular basis? Think about it, right?
Well, I don't know. I have a lot of Australian friends, and they've taught me that you really only need to shower about once a month. But
that's right. It's once a month, down under, down. And when I'm drinking my beer with my mates.
Oh, your beer.
Beer.
Yeah, I know I'm going to get a lot of shit because I have a lot of adopted Australian family and dear friends. So I apologize, Australia. I love you, but oh, that's gorgeous.
Well, this is where this came from. That's where Jack Bauer comes from. My friends on the
Victoria Police Force. They gave you Jack Bauer.
They gave me Jack Bauer. Guy named Daryl Stevenson.
How cool is that?
Dr. Daryl Stevenson, my buddy. So yeah, but anyway.
Yeah. So your point is right, which is, hey, shower fairly regularly.
So I was again doing a healthcare keynote. I said, how often do you train on surgical procedures like scrubbing and here's the latest stuff? Oh, all the time. When's the last time you trained people on how to set and remember its good password, or how to use their two-factor authentication, or when to not click on a link? They don't. They do it. They think it's like their sexual harassment training. We do it once a year and we're good. Well, then you come to find out that Google and the University of Illinois did a little study. They took 100 USBs, threw them, placed them all around campus, even though people have been told don't plug these things in. And like 80 out of 100 of those USBs got plugged in because the minute you plugged them in, they activated a little program that called home and said, hey, somebody plug this USB in. It wasn't malicious, but it was a test. So if people think, oh, well, we've done our education and awareness. No, and I'll tell you the other thing too, Christopher, here's the other stat that makes a difference. And this shows you why it's going to be so tough. By 2020, 50% of the workforce will be millennials. That means we'll have millennials.
Isn't that terrifying?
Well, it's a challenge. And here's why. Because 50% will have millennials, we'll have Gen Y, Gen X, and baby boomers all in the workforce at the same time. We have 4 fundamentally different views of privacy. How you and I view privacy is fundamentally different than how a 25-year-old views privacy. Why did Facebook take off? Because as the millennials grew up and Mark Zuckerberg called it, he went mobile. He knew that's what it was going to be. There's a lower expectation of privacy. So not with me. It's like there are times to where like I have a secure environment where I'm at, my office. So there's some things I do in here because I'm in my house. I can lock my door. I can do stuff. But when I'm out in public or I'm traveling, for example, I'll show you one neat little thing. Here's my wallet. And the thing you can't see is that's the back of my driver's license. I don't have my driver's license facing like this. I have it facing like that. You know why? Because if I'm in line or doing something, it's just little things like that, little tricks like that.
So no one can see your identity? Is that?
Nobody can see. They can't. Yep. They can't guess a date of birth. Even when I'm traveling, you have people have their bag tags. I can get. You know what? Here's the thing. I freak people out all the time. I'll look at you. You and I may have never met, but I'll see your bags. I'll take a look. By the way, it's just like looking at your right arm. I can see already you have a treble clef as part of your tattoo there, and it almost looks like you had a Star of David on the inside of your arm.
I have a what? Oh, a treble clef. Yeah.
Treble clef. And then what's on the inside?
It's funny. It looks like a Star of David. That's interesting. It's a snowflake, but yeah, I could see why you would think it's a Star of David. Yeah, very, very good.
But it's enough for me to freak you out to have, and this is social engineering. This is why I was good as a detective. You would take little things like that. Hey, I'm a musician too. Oh, really? You are? I would lower your defenses, and now I could either start getting information, or I might look at your name tag and just freak you out by saying, hey, Christopher, how you doing? Well, how the hell do you know my name?
Yeah, no, that is freaky. And the other one I'm paranoid about is, you get all this junk mail, right? Still to this day, like physical fucking junk mail. And so we throw all that stuff out in the recycler. And
no, mate. See that right there? That's my shredder. Everything goes through the shredder.
Yeah, so if you get, let's talk about maybe some of our favorite junk mail. You get the Victoria's Secret catalog.
Oh, no, that's a keeper. I have a shelf just for that. No.
do you shred the whole thing or do you, okay, that one you keep, but like.
Well, my wife gets it. But no, all you have to do if you want to get rid of it, just tear the address label off because there's codes and stuff on it. Just tear that off, shred it, and you can throw the magazine away. But I take, for example, it's like I'll get something like this. I don't know whatever it says. It says some administrative office, but it's just junk mail. I just put the whole thing in there, and boom, just be done with it.
Because I always try to tear the address part off, so it doesn't have our name and address on it before we throw it out. Because sitting in our in our garbage right now are God knows how many documents that have our names and addresses on them, and I don't know. That's always sort of freaked me out a little bit.
Well, it's called dumpster diving. So I will tell you, date myself. 1993 was the first computer crime course I went through, and we were at the headquarters of the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, and it was a federally funded course, but we decided, hey, let's go have a little fun. So we went to their trash bins that were supposed to be secured with a lock, and we started dumpster diving. I pulled out all the American Express receipts for their special agents. I knew what they were spending, where they were spending it, who they were spending it on. In other words, I could have tracked and put together all of their investigations that were going on because they assumed that if they put it in here, it was going to go into a secure bin. And my question was, why weren't you guys shredding this stuff? So, I mean,
we should just shred all that stuff, shred everything.
Shred. I mean, that's actually one of my tips too. I give, hey, shred it, shred. And I don't, in fact, nothing, I've got to the point, look, I had a chance to go to a speaking or an engagement where Frank Abagnale, the guy that they made the movie Catch Me If You Can about.
Yep.
And I actually had a chance to talk with him for a little bit. And it was because he talked about shredding. He says he shreds the whole thing, envelope the whole works. He just to the point, it's not worth it. You don't know what information they're getting there. So just drop the entire envelope in there, shred it, and be done with it.
And then is there anything else from an enterprise point of view, if we sort of go back to I'm that CEO that I should be thinking about?
I think from day one, they talk about culture. Security has to be part of the culture. When I was a trooper and my kids were growing up, they got in the car. What's the one thing we did? It wasn't the law back then, but I knew because I worked accidents, I worked fatalities. Everybody who rides in my car, that means family members, whatever, everybody wears a seatbelt. My car does not move to this day unless everybody has a seatbelt on. I don't care if you go, well, I want to be thrown clear in the wreck. Not in my car. Take a taxi, find an Uber or whatever you can drive. But you're in my vehicle. And I can tell you from experience, I've worked a few thousand accidents and I've worked a bunch of fatalities. I've never unbuckled a dead person out of a car. So I said, my car, my rules, everybody with the seatbelt. But to this day, what do my kids do when they get in? It just becomes habit. If we can make this as part of a culture, because the reason I said millennials, biggest problem they're going to have is they have this lowered expectation.
They're too free with the technology. They don't think about this, right?
Right. They don't think about
they don't think about it as much as we think about it. Let me say it. Maybe say it that way.
And it's not a negative, guys. It's the way. Look. I was over in Belgium. I remember with Cisco, we had a big meeting over there. So we're at a bar, the Delirium Tremens bar. You'd love it, man. 300 labels on the ceiling of all the different beers they serve, and every beer had its own glass. So we're sitting there.
I do like beer.
Oh, well, that's the place to go. And I remember to this day, I turned and I looked down the bar and I see these two girls there. And I mean, these were young girls. My daughter was their age. She was 15 at the time. I said, I know I haven't had that much beer. Well, again, culturally, and the legal drinking age in Belgium is 16 years old. You can be in a bar at 16 and have a beer. It's their culture. It's the way they do things. They grew up on it. You don't have a lot of binge drinking in some of those countries. Why? Because it was just, that's the way they grew up.
It's like that where I grew up in Quebec, Canada. I think it's still the case today. The legal drinking age is 18, but it's really merely a suggestion. Yeah. And the reality is if we're out to lunch or dinner and we order wine or beer and there's a 14 to 16-year-old at the table, they're going to get served a glass.
They're going to get some, right.
Yeah, I mean, and nobody's even going to think about anything.
I did a meeting one time. I went over with the guy I was working with at Cisco. We had our global meeting in Nice, France, because Cisco had an office in Sophia Antipolis. I love to say it was right next to Saint-Tropez and Monaco. So we made a weekend out of it, but we were in their office. Every office in France, or at least most of them, you open up the drawer, they have wine glasses and a corkscrew, because for them to serve a lunch and have some wine with it is no big deal. You try opening up a bottle of wine on the San Jose campus of Cisco, HR will wet their pants, running down, go, what are you doing? You can't do that. I mean, totally different culture.
I always, my entire time as an executive in Silicon Valley, I always had a bar in my office. I think shit
gets done better when you've got a couple drinks under your belt and everybody loosens. We get past this corporate facade and say, okay, Here's what I need. What do you need? How do we meet in the middle, make this thing work? What do we got to do?
Absolutely. All right. Is there anything else I should be thinking of either as the CEO of a non-tech company or as the CEO of a tech company?
Here's the thing: is everybody's in tech now. Everybody's in software. It's all about the software. It's whether you sell widgets or you're a trucking company. I think you guys have talked about it too. Taxi companies, right? Taxi companies are technology companies. You have to be, right? So it all starts.
And I don't know about you, Morgan, but I am blown away by the speed of adoption of IoT. It feels like IoT began to tip maybe last year. I'm not an IoT expert, but it feels like it maybe began to tip at some kind of real scale. And I just hear every week about big things that major Fortune 500s are doing by bringing the internet of things to or bringing the internet and sticking it in the world.
That's scary.
So to speak.
And let me tell you what's scary about it. When they had that huge denial of service attack, it was called the Mirai botnet. That thing worked because all of these IoT devices, home-based devices, network video recorders, everything to make your life easier. People are such in a hurry to get that crap out there. That's what it is. As Scotty says, it's crap because they put hard-coded passwords into them. They 65 default sets of administrative names and passwords basically floating around the internet. And most of these companies are using those things. So when you get them, unless you go through and, hey, I got to reset this, which most people don't, I can now get into your baby monitor. I can get into your network video recorder. People joked about, look, I was on 3 years ago on Fox News talking about, it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, but could Al-Qaeda actually hack your car? I said, well, look, Teslas, what were they built with? A 3G modem. Why? So they could do over-the-air updates to their firmware and software. I mean, they had.
It's funny you mentioned Tesla. My wife just bought a new SUV, and so we test drove the Tesla SUV. And the two ways I would describe a Tesla, and I think, by the way, I love what Elon is doing. We didn't buy one, and the reason we didn't buy one is, it's a traveling iPhone.
Yep.
And it was just like a lot of fucking technology in a vehicle, and I said to them, there's one feature I want. Can I turn off downloads? Because I know a bunch of folks that have these things and they park them at night, that connect to the house Wi-Fi, and overnight they get new shit, right? Just
telemetry goes up, downloads come down. Yeah, they know the health of your car.
Which is very cool. But at the same time, then you turn the car on and shit's in a different place, just like it is on your iPhone when you upgrade. So I'm just not somebody who wants that in my life. And then we had the legendary venture capitalist Mike Maples on Legends and Losers, and he talks about network capitalism in the future, and it's a fascinating discussion. And in there, he shares that he was on the highway here in Silicon Valley, and his fucking door opened of his Tesla just randomly. Yeah. And so I guess my question is, are you as afraid of that shit getting hacked as I am?
Oh, no, and I'm not so much afraid, but I'm aware it's going to happen. And so to finish out that story, I got piled on by a car blog out there. If you're part of Jalopnik and you're one of the folks who piled on me, you should be kissing my ass right now, because I was so spot on 3 years ago, because I told them, I said, it's not today, but what you see today will morph into something later. And what happened? Two guys from DARPA, two really smart guys, guess what they did? They found a way through the entertainment console, which basically the same manufacturer supplied a bunch of companies the same entertainment console. They got into that entertainment console over the air. They and this is a controlled test, but they pushed the brakes, they turned on the windshield wipers, they shut the car off, they took control of that Jeep. And then what happened? The auto industry says, oh my God, we got to get serious about cybersecurity. So they created the Automotive Information Sharing Analysis Center, the ISAC. They're 17 years late to the game, because the first ISAC, the Financial Services Information Sharing Analysis Center, I was part of the team at SCIC that built the very first one. The financial services industry figured this out 17 years ago, that they needed a better way to share information. So anyway, to your point, yeah, I don't have any faith that these automotive people, they get it. But I think my question is, are they doing it for the optics, or are they doing it because it's the right thing to do? Time is going to tell. But if the mere fact that I can reach into a hospital room, or I can reach into somebody's network because they don't protect it, or I can get into your car, should make people pause and say, are we giving companies too much information? And I'll finish it with this analogy. At that MIT forum I moderated, I said, are you more worried about the government and the CIA and what the NSA has, or are you more worried about what Facebook and Google have about you? Because I will tell you right now, if I had to pick one database or the other, I'd go for Facebook and Google, because they've got far more information about you. They can predict far more things about you than having worked inside a classified environment before. I can tell you what people think is inside there isn't necessarily what they think it is. But I can sure as hell tell you, I mean, between Google and Facebook, man, that's you want to see unchecked power. That's unchecked power there.
Well, throw Apple in with your iPhone, and there you go, right?
Yeah.
All right, Morgan, would you like to play a little word association with me?
Does it rhyme with boobs? Because I've played this game before.
Well, sometimes they're, depending on my mood and the number of libations that have been involved in the dialogue, I think almost everything rhymes with boobs. But
I'm going. Yeah.
All right, let's play a little word association. When I say Alexa, what do you think of?
God, no. No.
Okay, that's what I think of too. But I want to. So why God no on these IoT devices that sit in your house?
Have you seen that video between Alexa and Google where the guy says, "Hey Alexa, what's on my calendar?" "Hi Dave, the only thing on your calendar is, hey Google, what's on my calendar?" Then what Google goes, "Hi Dave, the only thing on your calendar is, hey Alexa, what's on my calendar?" And they've got these things battling back and forth. Here's the other thing too. To me, it's privacy. When you say the word Alexa, I think privacy, and I don't think in a good way. I think I am not willing to allow something automated in my house, even though Amazon says we only capture a small piece of it. I know of a case in Kentucky and some other places to where they're actually using Alexa data to determine whether or not somebody committed a homicide or not. So
because that fucking thing is listening. That's what it does, right?
It's listening all the time. And I did a segment.
And so if I say something, provocative to my wife, as I am apt to do, that shit could be captured, right? We have no idea what the fuck they're doing, right?
I can tell you what they were doing if you want to think conspiracy theory. Here's what I'd be doing. I'd be listening all the time. Even though I may not save the conversation, I might hear keywords about you guys were talking about kale, and broccoli is the new kale. I might hear this. And then pretty soon, the next time you go on and you are in Facebook or you're on Google,
I'm getting broccoli shit in my feed or whatever.
Broccoli shit. It's listening and it's
that shit's is that shit happening now?
I believe it's happening. Here's the thing. If you read those privacy policies, and I just read one too, I've been very interested in my ancestry because it's Scottish and Irish.
I read all the privacy policies.
Yeah. Well, you better read the one about ancestry DNA, because come to find out, I read what a lawyer did. They went through and they looked at it. If you send in your DNA to them, they own your DNA and anybody who's genetically related to you, and they can share that information with law enforcement, with healthcare systems and stuff. So people have no idea. Remember, privacy statements and policies are written by lawyers for other lawyers. They're not written. And in fact, going back to Seth Godin, I like the way he talks about basically how they do contracts and stuff. They says, look, we'll talk it out. We're not going to sue you. Here's what we want to do. I mean, basically kept it simple. It's like an NDA says, I'm going to tell you stuff. You're going to tell me stuff. When we agree, we're not going to share that stuff unless everybody already knows it. I mean, it can't be that simple because lawyers have to get involved. So
hell no, Alexa for you.
No, you won't see Alexa in my office. If I get it, it'll be purely just for fun, just to say, hey, look, I want to test it, see what it does. But I'll tell you this, if you do have Alexa, hey, Alexa, order 10,000 copies of Play Bigger. Yeah.
Thank you. On one of our very early episodes, did you hear that one with Ray Wong?
Yeah, and that's Hey, Alexa, complete order. Yeah,
I'm surprised. The success of this show has blown me away because I thought, who's going to ever want to listen to this?
Because you're authentic. You hit an authentic nerve. I think what you do is you cut through all the BS. I am tired. Look, you see how I'm dressed right now, right? This is, if I could live my life, it would be in Tommy Bahama. In fact.
Well, why don't you?
Oh, I do. In fact, see this?
What the hell is all that?
That's the tag of everything I've ever bought from Tommy Bahama.
Are you sponsored by them, Morgan?
No, I should be, though. I am willing to be sponsored in the mid-50s category of guys with gray hair who love Tommy Bahama. But the point is, it's authentic. I got to the point, I don't give a shit anymore what you think about me, because I'm beyond that. When you hit 50, it's like liberating, and you'll hit that too. Once you hit 50, it's kind of like.
I think when we started Legends and Losers, I said, fuck it. And the aha that I had was, my whole life I've represented other entities than myself.
Yep.
CMO of public companies, you say shit, the stock goes up, stock goes down.
Yep.
And even at Play Bigger, the company with Dave and Al, when any of us, for that matter, go out in the world, you represent your company. And it sort of struck me like I don't have that anymore. I can, as I think of it, let my crazy off the chain.
Well, and that's unleash your crazy, and that's the whole point. So it's like, so I do stuff like this. But you're talking about if I were going to use Alexa, here's the way I would use it. I would know that I would physically disconnect it or turn it off. I mean, it'd be great. Like during the workday, I could see in an office like me, where I'm a solo practitioner for now. Like I said, we're putting together a company, but a solo practitioner for now. Alexa would be good from a work standpoint to say, hey, Alexa, look up this, or Alexa, do this. It could actually augment what I'm doing. But putting it where the family is, and all of my kids are grown up now, so my youngest is 28, that's not an issue. But I worry about the privacy of young children and stuff like that. I would not put it into my home environment because I don't want it picking up on keywords or listening in. Yep. It's like being naked, walking around, and all the shades are up, and you're in downtown Manhattan. I mean, if you mean to do it, and that's you, that's okay. But most people, it's like, no.
You notice, I hate to interrupt you, Morgan, but the people who do that, the people who walk around naked where you can see them, are never the people you want to be doing that.
No, that's true. Look,
right? Damn. All right, let me try another word association with you. Graham Snowden, or Snowden, however you say his name.
Edward Snowden?
Excuse me, Edward. Jeez Louise. And I have not consumed anything of altering state. Yes, Edward Snowden.
Traitor.
Interesting. Putin.
Criminal.
And who flung poo? The guy that runs North Korea.
Kim Jong-un. Knuckin' Futz. He's the one I worry about, not Putin. I worry about Kim Jong-un.
And why do you worry about him?
Because he has nothing to lose. You can't sanction them anymore. The only thing you can do is invade, which if they invade, they launch an attack against South Korea, which will kill millions of people. He's got nothing to lose. I mean, he's got every card in the world to play right now, and he's doing it. He's firing more missiles. He's doing stuff. This is the guy now. When you think of Iran, and I grew up in Iran for 3 years. My dad was military, so I grew up speaking Farsi. I grew up in the Middle East. It is fundamentally different than what it was then. Even Iran can be contained because you've got players like Saudi Arabia and other countries who are willing to step up and say, nope, you don't get to take this over. You don't get to have the nukes. But China is not going to do that to North Korea. And other than China, there is no other country that could actually have a material impact on North Korea. And that's why I worry about North Korea from a nuclear and a terrorism point of view. By the way, North Korea is still a state sponsor of terrorism, according to our government.
And so are they the country you are most concerned about in technology warfare?
They are a country I'm worried about because obviously they could do, they might be, there's a lot of analysis saying, hey, they're behind the attacks with WannaCry. They obviously, we know what they did with Sony. Their ability to scale is a little bit different. I do worry about China and Russia because these people do build nuclear weapons. They do steal a lot of our technology. They do have the resources when you look at the GRU from the military side and the FSB and SVR, which are their internal and external security organs in Russia. You look at China, Unit 61398, which is the one who did all of the hacking that we indicted 5 people for. Why? Needlessly, because we'll never see those guys. It was a waste of paper to do that. So, but I worry about North Korea because, again, they even in unconventional warfare, there are still things called mutually assured destruction, and we do have some protocols. North Korea is not part of any of those protocols or those dialogues. Like if things are getting tense, we do have the ability to call Russia or China and say, hey, look, your aircraft carriers, this, you try and do some things. North Korea is not a member of the international community, and they choose not to be. So that's why I worry about them more. We don't have ways to really deal with them and communicate them, even though we do with China, Russia, France, even Pakistan, India, all the other nuclear powers.
Fascinating. All right, Morgan. Well, as we get ready to kick out of this wave, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, we're recording this. I know you'll play it later, but we're recording this today on Memorial Day. So the thing I want people to understand is, especially with my friends in Canada because I do know about the poppy and the reason they wear the poppy up in Canada. Remember, folks, and I actually, a good friend of mine was killed in Afghanistan. So you remember what this day is about. This is about respecting Memorial Day is about the people who have died in service of their country. So make sure you thank a vet today. Also make sure you thank law enforcement. Because, people have a tough job to do. And look, I just leave you with, look, if you're going to do something, do it. I like Steve Jobs' quote. He says, most people have never been held to this standard of excellence. If you want to be legendary, like you say, do it with excellence. Do it with everything behind it. I mean, you may not leave your dent on the universe the way that Steve Jobs or Elon Musk has, but trust me, in the records of time, when the roll call is done and you're before whoever you worship or whatever God you are. I just want to know at some point when I leave this earth, somebody in my family can look back and realize that, hey, I at least did my little part to make this a better place to live in. So that's my parting gift.
Well, Morgan, I think you're awesome. I've said many times that I believe that entrepreneurs build our country.
Yep.
And our military, our law enforcement, and our fire service protect our country.
Absolutely. Don't forget our brothers and sisters in the fire service and emergency medical too.
Yeah, I said fire service. Let's absolutely emergency medical service. I have some very close friends who are first responders of different types, amazing women and men. And what I love about you, other than it's just fun hanging out, is you are both of those things. You are somebody who dedicated the early part of your career to protecting us. You still are dedicated clearly to protecting us. And I think it's incredibly cool that you're an entrepreneur now.
Yeah. I'm having fun too. And look, if it wasn't for the countries that we have, for example, Canada, the United States, Australia, Great Britain, some of these countries who have the foundations of democracy in them that allow people to come in and do these things. Look, you look at where some of the greatest things have ever happened, and they happen out of countries where there's this level of freedom to where you can go do that. And and you don't, freedom, as they say, is not free. It's paid for with the blood, sweat, and tears of the people who've gone before us. Even in entrepreneurialism, you know what? For you to write a book like that, you have done more to leave a mark than if you just been the CMO of Mercury and just said, hey, I punched out and retired. Nobody, I tell you right now, I would have not known your name or cared about who you were because I have no idea. I've heard of it, but I had no idea what it was. But your book, your encapsulation, your memorialization of all of your life learning, and for you to be able to give that to me is not something you could have done in the 20 years, you did it, through this book. And I tell you, if you could see this, my iPad is almost a constant thing of yellow because I have so many things marked right now, so many good lessons. So look, you are what makes it worthwhile. You know what? Because of what you do, it makes it worthwhile for these people to go out and do what they do, because that's the whole reason. Do we have the freedom to innovate, to create, to do things? And yes, we do, especially on this really, truly most sacred of days. So I want to say thank you. I love the book. I don't say that about many books, but when I get into a book, I'm on it like a dog on a bone, man. I don't let go of it.
Well, that's incredibly awesome of you to say, Morgan. I'm so glad you feel that way. I tried really hard, and I know the other guys did too, because obviously
it's great stuff.
We worked really hard together on it. It was a tremendous amount of fun. I hope that comes through in the book. And I know all of us felt the same way, and that we were doing that in hopes that one day, great innovators and entrepreneurs like you might feel that way. So thank you so much. And in that area, as you go through your category design journey, if you want to fire up a Zoom like this and jam on a couple of ideas, I'd be happy to help out if I can, Morgan.
Funny you should mention that, because that was the reason I reached out to Tom Schwab, Interview of LA is my mastermind group. I'm actually, I'll just give you a quick 30-second, but I think the market, police technology has been so compartmentalized and so stovepiped. And I know I worked at the Department of Justice on this big program. I'm telling you let me tell you how you will affect the safety and security of a lot of people because of the thought processes that you've put into your book that allow people like me to do this. I can now do a better job of thinking through how can I make a bigger impact in public safety in the lives of these officers. And I won't say it on this, but I will tell you, just going through the idea of category design, I have a book right here that I write down just since I started talking to you. I'm showing you all these pages right back to right about there. These pages here all came out of after I read Play Bigger and I started thinking category design. I've gotten a ton of innovation. That's why I had to move my whiteboard, because my whiteboard actually has some confidential data on it. But I'm telling you, I am so ready to go out and kick ass and take names and redefine this. And you know what? I told the marketing firm we're working with, this is about category design. Get the category right first, market the problem, the solution will follow. We've already found problems nobody knows how to solve, or problems they never knew they had that we're going to solve for them.
I fucking love it, Morgan. Fucking
I'm ready. Battle. Let's go. Sun Tzu.
It just matters so much to me that we have more entrepreneurial successes in our world, and that's fucking great. And I just think of all the innovations that get lost on the cutting room floor because they don't find their place in the world.
They die because they don't have a framework like this to bring it. This is a canvas. You've given the canvas now for these ideas to really come to life. And that's what excited me about this book. So
we wanted to at least spark the dialogue, right? We were amazed that there was sort of nobody having this conversation at all. Never mind nobody even proposing sort of a synthesis of what some of the greats have done and how we might sort of start from there. And so, I hope it comes across in the book Play Bigger that we're trying to spark a dialogue. We're not saying these are the 10 commandments. We're saying, hey, sort of start here and innovate and do whatever you want with it.
You've taken a blank piece of paper and you've at least put something on there so people have a place to go. The worst thing in the world is for me to give you a blank piece of paper and say, go invent something. Well, what? Now you've given me a process to say, here's how I take this thought and this thought and this thought and this thought. This is how I can organize them now. Oh, when I do that, I just have had a profound new insight that allows me to go attack this market in a way I didn't know I could before. And I will. There are some companies out there, Axon, Motorola, you guys are all on notice. You won't see it coming, but when it happens, you'll know who and you will know why, and it'll be me. I am Batman. I saw your poster back there, but no.
Well, Morgan, you're awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I agree with your sentiment about Memorial Day and the poppies in Canada. I actually, this tattoo is a poppy.
Oh, outstanding.
My grandfather served in World War II. And as a young man growing up in Canada around, we call it Remembrance Day, November 11th, it was vets, mostly World War II vets, who would stand in the subways and on the city streets, and they would sell these little plastic poppies or sell for donations to give to Canadian charities that supported veterans. And of course, as a little boy, they all looked like my granddad to me, right? And so there's something very powerful. And then the poem, have you read the poem In Flanders Field Where Poppies Grow?
Yes, I have.
So that was actually written during World War I by a Canadian who lost a friend, right? And so, yeah, the military, their commitment and service to us, and what the poppy symbolizes in the loss of life, because in Flanders Field where poppies grow is, of course, where so many of the war dead are buried. So I agree with you completely, and I appreciate your kind words.
Sir.
Pleasure, sir.
Sir.
Whew. There he is, Morgan Wright. Thanks, Morgan. What a great dialogue. And if you like this episode, you will love episode 5 with tech industry icon, my good friend, Bob Evans. I would like to share with you One Life Fully Lived, a nonprofit started by my dear friend and Legends and Losers guest, Tim Rode. And if you haven't checked out his episode, talk about fun and funny. Tim, chasing Tim around in a conversation is one of the best things you can do. So he's the founder of One Life Fully Lived. I'm honored to have been involved with him since even before the creation of the organization. And we are a nonprofit. Nobody takes any money out of this organization. Timmy and his wife don't take a salary. And I've spoken at almost all of the West Coast events over time. I'm proud to say that not only do I not get paid to speak, but I write a check to One Life Fully Live, and I've been helping One Life Fully Live from the beginning. And the idea was, how do we take the best information about becoming your best self, personal development, self-actualization, self-help, all that good shit? How do we take financial information, whether it's basics around managing your credit cards and balancing a checkbook? And the third sort of dimension is, how do you have a legendary career, build a legendary business? So One Life Fully Lived is a nonprofit dedicated to helping you dream, plan, and live your best life. And our big event on the West Coast of the year is happening in Sacramento, California, October 21 and 22, 2017. 21 and 22. 2017, I will be there. John Vroman will be there. I'm pretty sure John Berghoff will be there, both Legends and Losers guests, as well as, of course, Tim himself. And we would love it if you are there. Go to onelifefullylived.org for information about our event in Sacramento. Also want to share with you that I am proud to be on tour with Jason Maynard and the good people at NetSuite. #1 in cloud ERP. What I love about what we're doing, NetSuite is a company whose customers are primarily entrepreneurial businesses. And so as a company, their executive team and the company believes in entrepreneurship just like we do. And so they're on the road right now talking about how technology and new business strategies can make a gigantic difference for entrepreneurs in what we call the Next Ready Business Tour. How do you be ready for whatever happens next in your business? And as part of that tour, I will be speaking, signing books, and generally behaving badly. August 24th, San Diego. September 20th, Denver. September 26th, Toronto. September 27th, New York, and November 9th in Miami. For your personal VIP invitation to the NetSuite Next Ready Tour at any of those cities, go to legendsandlosers.com and click on NetSuite Tour, or just send email to blackhole@legendsandlosers.com, and we will make sure you get your VIP invite. Now, we would also like to shout out to some of our new friends who've been so kind to us in the social media world. So to Nancy Summers for your wonderful LinkedIn note, thank you so much. Ted Elvnaj, I'm not sure if I'm saying it 100% right. Ted and I used to work together years ago, and he was a great colleague, and he's in Sweden, and he's been tweeting his support and love for for Legends and Losers. And of course, Sweden is the home of Dr. Samuel West and our favorite museum, the Museum of Failure. Also need to shout out to Martha Oberovich. God, some of these are tough for a dyslexic. Obovich. Martha Obovich. She sent an absolutely wonderful email to me on Facebook. I don't want to get into the content of it. It's probably not appropriate. But hey, Martha, thank you so much for reaching out. And then I got this weird thing in the mail the other day, and I don't know who the fuck sent it to me. If you're watching, you can see this is an actual potato. So somebody mailed me this thing. I don't know what it was. It was called like a potatogram, although it wasn't a potatogram. And on it, written on the potato, it says, fact, a chicken is the closest relative to a T-Rex, which I actually know and think is awesome. And I think this is quite funny. But I don't know who the fuck sent this to me. So if you sent me this potato with this chicken T-Rex fact on it, drop an email to blackhole@legendsandlosers.com and introduce yourself. Regardless, thank you. It was awesome. Also would like to encourage you to go to legendsandlosers.com and click on subscribe. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. We've been getting a little bump lately in some of our ratings and reviews on social media, iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube. So please keep writing those. We love them. Thank you so much. We're going to be doing more and more on our Facebook group. We're going to do some live Facebook shows soon. So join the group at facebook.com/groups/legends and losers. You can find us on Twitter at legendslosers. And of course, email blackhole@legendsandlosers.com. We would like to thank HarperCollins Instant Classic Play Bigger, How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets. Equity Directory, connecting startups to the talent and resources they need to build a legendary business. Our good friends at NetSuite, #1 in cloud ERP. OneLifeFullyLived.org, the nonprofit helping you dream, plan, and live your life. Come and see us in September in Sacramento. Spiro, the sales app for salespeople and sales managers who like to make money. Verve Coffee Roasters in Santa Cruz, California. Put a little Santa Cruz in your coffee. Yummy, and the official coffee roasters of Legends and Losers. The Real Fast Results podcast with our friend Daniel Hall. Thanks for having me on, Daniel. You're a class act and you got a great show. Category Design Advisors, working with leadership teams to dominate new categories. The Museum of Failure in beautiful Sweden. Check them out at museumoffailure.se. And if you're going to be in Sweden, check out the Museum of Failure. Outposition.com, legendary marketing, PR, communications, and of course, category design in Singapore. Speaking of folks doing that outside of the United States, Paul Maher and our good friends at Positive Marketing, legendary marketing, and category design in the United, or as you might think of, the excited kingdom. Santa Cruz, California. Beware of our sharks. They like to eat children. PursuingResults.com, the producers of legendary podcasts. And this one, Interview Valet, podcast interview marketing. If you're smart and a thought leader, get yourself on some podcasts and get some business done. Disrupting Digital Business, the must-read book by our friend, guest, visionary Ray Wong of Constellation Research. Conscious Millionaire and Inc. Magazine Top Business Podcast with our buddy, J.V. Crum III, and the World Wildlife Foundation, because we only have one planet. This oddcast is the sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we'd love it if you shared the shit out of it. All rights are disturbed. The producers of this oddcast may have been consuming libations. We also must warn you, this oddcast was produced in a studio that does contain nuts. Legends and Losers may contain forward-looking, backward-looking, or present moment-looking statements, and actual results and future events could differ materially. Please do listen to Linkin Park, R.I.P. to Chester Bennington. Rest in peace, Chester. You are one in a zillion. Never forget that Legends and Losers is never tested on GMOs. Support your local entrepreneurs and support your local technology executives. They need a lot of support. Don't be lame. Get out of the passing lane. As always, thank you, Dandy Candy, for taking care of us. Remember to shower weekly. In the event of a 4-hour erection, call somebody that you like. Don't forget to support your local security expert. Watch out for Putin. And hey, Colin, don't forget, this oddcast really ties the room together. Our deepest apologies go out to Elizabeth Holmes, CEO of Theranos. Sorry, Lizzie, we just ran out of time for you. That's it. Be great, be legendary, and we'll see you soon on another episode of Legends and Losers.